How's it going, everybody? So we have a fun review today as we're talking Twilight of the Gods, which doesn't seem like it's getting very much coverage, coming out today from Netflix, a Zack Snyder co-created animated series, but nevertheless, I am always intrigued by a good revenge tale, especially when you do something fun or interesting with it, like with this show, and their usage of Norse mythology as a backdrop. Of course, a large amount of the audience who tunes in for Twilight of the Gods absolutely will be big Zack Snyder fans, since he co-created the series and also directed the first episode and the finale, and with that brings all of his staples with him to this series, the good ones and the bad ones. Much like in the majority of his projects, the man likes putting together ragtag groups with unique characteristics, and a main reason I believe it works effectively here, however, is attributed to the fact that it is a series after all, so you have a lot more time to develop these characters compared to a film. Here in Twilight of the Gods, there's far more room to form connections to the characters. Episode 1 wastes pretty much no time to instantly hook you on Sigrid's journey of revenge, following the inciting incident of Thor brutally massacring her entire family at her wedding. It's a strong but painful hook, strengthened by the characters themselves she meets along the way to aid her, all having their own interesting reasonings on why they joined this crazy mission to kill a god. Around the first half of this series is where I feel like Twilight of the Gods is the strongest. The adventure in many ways feels very video game-like in nature, and I'm not saying that as a negative thing. I love video games. It boils down to how everything unfolds. Every episode, exciting new adventures are introduced to the group. They acquire special, powerful weaponry, along with a plethora of really cool mythical foes that they fight across this journey. Now, I'm no expert on Norse mythology. I think the most recent example of Norse mythology, in my mind, is thinking of God of War Ragnarok. The usage of all of that different mythology and the way they incorporate it into this show is an aspect where I feel like the series shined with its world building. I mean, there's literally one episode in Twilight of the Gods centered around a quest to go steal apples and kill a dragon, and if they do so, these people will join their cause. I don't think you can get more video game centric of a side quest than that. The big battle between them and the dragon leads me into my next point, and that is about the action of this series. The action, it just goes extremely hard. The animation style for this series lends itself well into enhancing the fantastical kinetic energy of these characters in battle, while not even doubling down on the action. I would say it probably triples or quadruples. It's honestly kind of wild how bloody and gory the battles get, whether it's the team itself or the gods like Loki or even Thor just completely obliterating people on the battlefield. Needless to say, it is not for the faint of heart. If you're not a big fan of violence, this is not going to be the show for you. Like, I'm talking about guts spilling out of people, heads being bashed in. I don't think I've ever seen an animated show have this many decapitations in one 8-episode long series. And yes, before anyone asks, even though it is animation, Zack Snyder still manages to find various different ways to do slow motion action sequences. But you have to remember he only directs 2 of the 8 episodes, so it's not egregious or anything. While the team dynamic overall is enjoyable, there definitely are some standouts of the bunch. Sigrid especially, she is the main protagonist after all. Outside of the familiar beats that you're used to from a protagonist in a revenge tale, she's a pretty fascinating, multi-layered character. As badass of a character she is, blinded by revenge, there's so much sadness and tragedy in her arc. It's evident the sadness and rage consumes everything about her, and over the course of this journey, you see it consume her more and more, disregarding any desire for her own life, her future, does everything she can to keep herself distant emotionally from her husband Leif. Multiple times throughout this journey, she's trying everything she can to keep him from harm's way. And despite all of this, Leif still supports her across this insane journey. Outside of Leif, I think it will be down to your personal preferences, which members of the team that you prefer, because they are so vastly different from one another. My personal favorites probably was the angry dwarf of the group. Probably Ulfr, this crazy wolf guy who's strange but in kind of a cool way. As far as villains go, I don't think you can have a villain be more despicable than this interpretation of Thor. He's an incredibly arrogant, self-absorbed individual who brings zero redeeming qualities to the table. Even outside of Thor, the depiction of the god overall is a fairly scathing one. The commentary is very strong between them and Loki about their usage of humans as pawns in the games that they play, and how they feel invincible and are very much deserving of being knocked down a peg or two, whether that be through killing them outright or inciting a war among them like Loki seems to be trying to do. Loki, like usual when it comes to his depictions, is a very fun, mischievous character. Among everyone, he's the character you don't necessarily know which side he's on, or if he's on anyone's side at all, doing kind of just whatever suits his needs best. So it made all of his appearances throughout the episodes more intriguing as we learned why he's so invested in Sigrid's plot for revenge. Where things started to become a little frustrating to me watching Twilight of the Gods, I would say for the most part it was the middle section of the story. Plot progression and the pacing overall just hits a screeching halt. For multiple episodes, the excitement within the the adventure gradually builds and builds, since we know inevitably a big clash at the end is on the horizon. But so much of that momentum is undercut by the middle section where we just stop everything entirely. To me, it almost feels like this show was originally supposed to be 6 episodes long, but they now had a mandate to have 8 episodes, so they decided to pad things out a little bit, with different things like Leif and Loki having a side adventure, or another episode where everybody camps out and shares stories around a fire before the final battle. That episode wasn't even a Zack Snyder episode, but it did remind me a lot of that one big sequence in Rebel Moon, where right before the final battle, we had this huge exposition dump for all the different characters. I don't know why this keeps happening in Zack Snyder related projects, but I do overall like the characters a lot more in Twilight of the Gods compared to the Rebel Moon cast. You probably saw this in the marketing campaign just because it was hilarious that there's just in big bold letters sex in the trailer. And there is a solid amount of nudity and sex scenes throughout Twilight of the Gods, and I'm not even against sex scenes. However, it's incorporated into the show in such a way it almost just feels kind of unnatural. I would almost say these sequences just kind of came out of nowhere. It's not helped a lot by the fact that the romances within the show and these characters outside of Sigrid and Leif feeling kind of undercooked, so you don't really feel any strong emotions with them where some of these romances may lead down the line. Also, for how hyped I was about the final battle, and it is a very exciting final battle. It's a grand, over-the-top, blood-soaked war with humans, giants, etc. I do have an unfortunate feeling that there are going to be a lot of people that go into this final battle based on the premise of the show and leaving it feeling ultimately unsatisfied, since it doesn't necessarily commit to the expectations set forth, instead choosing to leave things a little bit open for a potential second season of this show. I personally thought this was just going to be a limited series, one and done kind of situation. It very much feels like to me with how we end things off in this, they want a second season of Twilight of the Gods, which to me personally, I think is kind of a big mistake. I don't know if necessarily this is a show that can build off of that for multiple seasons, maybe one more season maximum. Nevertheless, I still had a fairly enjoyable time with Twilight of the Gods. I think it's a fairly fun revenge tale. If you like Norse mythology, also just an overabundance of violence and gore, I think you're going to have a blast with it. Just be wary that if you're going to watch this show, you might not get the exact ending you want because there's going to be probably a second season. I mean, you never know with Netflix. They do like to cancel things one and done all the time. Once you get a chance to check out Twilight of the Gods, make sure you share your thoughts down below. What'd you think of the show? Did you like the show? Did you not like the show? As always, thank you guys so much for checking out the videos. I always do appreciate it. Make sure you like on the video and also subscribe to the channel to update reviews, reactions, unboxings, and more. Till next time, I'll see you guys later.